Hey Internet, it's time for Snakes and Shakes episode 2. Today we're here with my buddy Ty, and he came here to check out some other cool snakes. You do your jam, Ty. Introduce yourself.
I'm Ty. We got a ball python from these guys a couple months ago. Named him Gerald, so since that kind of spurred the love more so to say, then decided to come check out some other ones and see what other kinds we may possibly get, hopefully in the near future.
Right. I know it was. We've mentioned you guys in a couple previous videos where it was your wife. She decided to give you and your daughter the surprise gift of a ball python for Christmas.
Yes.
And it went from being scared outside in the car to holding everything under the sun. And correct me if I'm wrong, she actually holds on to him more than anybody else does in the house anymore, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I know that you're really interested in ball pythons. I know the wife and kid really like ball pythons, but I know that you're kind of more the snake aficionado in the house. So what other species are you interested in or want to check out today?
Definitely some Kingsnakes.
So here, this is Charlemagne. He's our resident California king snake. This is probably the first time we've actually had him on film because, as you've probably heard, king snakes have a little bit of a reputation of being very food motivated, as you could say. And so he's been in shed, and he brood mated himself too. So he's back up, he's warmed up a little bit, and he's on feed again. And so we decided to bring him out because, like you said, you were really interested in king snakes.
Mm-hmm. Definitely more mobile than the balls.
Mm-hmm. So, he's a colubrid species, right?
Yeah.
So colubrid species, they're the catch-all, collect-em-all taxonomy group Yep, of course he is. That's what they do. That scientists are just like, well, it's not a boa, it's not a ball python, it's not a viper, so it's a colubrid. And so it's a very wide range category of snakes, but for the most part, they're a little bit more evolved than, he is going for it. They're a little bit more evolved than like boas and pythons and stuff. They're more active hunters, so boas and pythons, they're kind of, ambush predators. Mm-hmm. They, like ball pythons, they hunker down, they have their little burrow, and they'll come out and get food and wait and get food, and then they go back to their burrow, and they're very sedentary, a lot more heavy-bodied. These guys are active, usually diurnal or crepuscular, so like dawn and dusk type hunters. So they're out searching for it, and that's why they move a lot more, because they're actively looking for food. And so that's why it's moving a lot more. That's why they're usually not as heavy-bodied, because all that bulk is really good all that bulk is good for sedentary kind of sit and wait hunters. Mm-hmm. But these guys, that kind of lean and mean cruising is good for these type of guys.
Their husbandry more dry, more humid.
So there's a big varying separation degree, so there's like old world rat snakes and stuff like that, and then there's like our local North American species, and so like that's the kings, the corns, and the milks, and he is just all over in there.
Oh yeah.
So think about like kind of where they're at in North America. Like it never gets super humid. Like Florida's a bit of a thing, but it's not Indonesia, it's not sub-Saharan Africa, it's not Australia. And so when you think about that, like a lot of these guys are good at kind of like a room temp, and then their hot spots don't need to be in the 90s. And depending on like those subspecies and stuff like that is dependent on like how hot they need to be. So for instance, for this Cal King, he is in a rack system because that's just where we have him. We're working on even getting him bigger spaces because, like you've pointed out, they're moving, they're cruising, they like a lot of space, and so we're working on building bigger racks for these guys so that way eventually he can be moving all over the place. But I would say, kind of like the same size setup you would do for like a ball python, at least like a 3 to 4 foot, little thing, because they like to move. But as far as like heats and temps and humidity go, I would say like in the 70s is good for just kind of like around, so like room temp, like you would like just your house or like a crested gecko. Mm-hmm. And then like a hot spot of like 91 at most is probably all you really need. And I know that's probably going to throw a lot of people upset at me, although not too many people are watching these days. But like it doesn't need to get super hot. Like the air temperature some days can be like 100 degrees like in Southern California, but snakes aren't out at 100-degree weather. They come out at like the perfect basking time, and then they go down and they wait until the temps are a little bit more beneficial for them, and then they'll actively hunt. So if it's super hot and if it's super cold, they're not out. They're going for that like mid 70s to high 80s. That's when they're cruising and when they're moving. They still need a little bit of humidity, so I would say like a lot of people keep colubrids and stuff like this on aspen bedding and stuff. Depending on where you are, like coconut in Florida, you're gonna get bacterial growth very quickly. Oh, he finally came out. Good job, Charlemagne. But like aspen bedding, and then you just give them like a humid hide, like even like you would with your ball python. So you have like a couple hides in your ball python setup, and then you have like sphagnum moss and stuff.
Yep.
So you can do exactly the same little hide system that you have for these guys. They just don't need it to be like that 70% humidity all the time, because it's just not that all the time here. And these guys have a pretty good, they're pretty forgiving, you could say, as far as like husbandry goes. Like ball pythons, once that water and humidity really kind of starts to dry up, they get a lot of shedding issues and stuff. And these guys, it doesn't really happen.
Then for feeding, is it more frequent in smaller meals since they are so mobile?
Yeah. I'm actually really glad that you asked for that. So these guys, like you've said, like we've talked about, they're a lot more active. That means their metabolism's higher. So like for like a big boa, it can take up to 2 weeks for a rat to fully go through their system entirely. But these guys, depending on the species and things like that, you know, every 5 to 7 days is like what they're moving and cruising and doing stuff. And so for like an adult colubrid, you could be feeding them every 7 to 10 days and you'll be just fine. The only thing about colubrids is a lot of people don't feed them rats because they have a little bit more fat on them. Yeah, they're bigger and they have more bones and stuff, but they're also a little bit more fatty. And colubrids, specifically like kings and corns and stuff, they can develop fat deposits, and that can be a real detriment on the health because it really weighs on their internal organs, and that can shorten their lifespans a bit. And here we have O'Malley, who is our Mexican black king snakes. So these guys have gotten super, super popular. Like when we picked him up, they were like $50-$60 for like a female, and now they're going for like $300. A lot of that actually has to do with like the overseas market too, but like for a long time they considered like black milk snakes, that was like the poor man's indigo. And now those things are getting more expensive, and now the Mexican black king snake is the poor man's indigo, even though it's a lot smaller, but even they're starting to get really popular. So husbandry, kind of the same as the cow kings. You can say that it might get a little bit warmer because they're from Mexico.
That also increased the humidity a little bit. So
Yep, they all still need that. They all still need that humid hide. They all still need humidity, big water dish, and fresh water, regardless of the species, unless you're dealing with like a Euromastix lizard or something like that. But nothing too crazy. But he was a little feisty coming out of his cage, but he's calmed down pretty well. But he's not moving. He doesn't actually move nearly as much as some of the other colubrids that we have. But I thought it'd be interesting because you can see like, even if you look at the head, like it's shaped a little bit differently than the California king snake. And I mean, theoretically they probably intergrade somewhere in their actual native like habitats, but like it's still in the same genus as all the other king snakes and milk snakes, but you can clearly see that it's different.
It's definitely different, and often feeding and everything also.
Yep. So and you know, like we talked about, like it depends, like if you're breeding them, so if you're planning on breeding them, or even if you're not, like brumation is actually kind of a lot of people think it's really good for them. It kind of gives their system like a whole reset. Like, have you done any research about brumation or anything like that?
I have a little bit, but not too much into it. So
like with ball pythons and like tropical species, it doesn't really matter as much. They more rely on like humidity and like a little bit of the temps and food. These guys, a lot of the time they almost require brumation. So here in the United States, come fall, it gets really cold, they'll go down, they'll hunker down, and they'll find like in like the 50s and the low 60s place where it's above frost line, where they'll stop eating entirely, and then they wait out the winter until it warms up. They come out, they eat a couple meals, they shed, and then they'll start breeding. And I know people who have corn snakes for over 27 years, and they brumated them almost every year, other than like when they were off for college and stuff. And I think that there's probably a lot of evidence to say that that's actually really good for their health.
So pretty much, if you get them, make sure you brumate them.
You can. I mean, there's no detriment to not doing it, but you're trying to recreate what they're doing out in the wild and where they're normally found. So there's nothing wrong with that. Same with like UVB and stuff. Like most snakes, they don't really need UVB necessarily to live long, extended, happy lives. but everything's better with it. So
Same kind of temperature and everything too as the other king.
Yep.
Cool.
Okay. And this is, we still have the Brooks king snake, and we may or may not bring him out. We'll see how this goes. But this is arguably my favorite type of colubrid species, or at least a type of king snake. Like when I was really little, when I was first getting into snakes and starting to research and do all these things, I saw a picture of one of these guys and I went, I must have it. And it took me like 7 years after I was into snakes and I finally got him. But this is the Thers or Therii, or even called variable king snake. So you'll see them with like a North American colubrids, they have like 97 names, and they're always changing up taxonomy about species, subspecies, locality, and blah, 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 blah. But they're called, so Therii is their scientific name, or the Thers king snake, but they're called variable king snakes because they come in a wide variety of just actual localities and patterns. So they're not actually necessarily morphs, they're just indistinct, I guess you could call them morphs, but they're not like the pastel and things like that where you can kind of stack on that. They're different polygenic actual morphs and patterns, and I see you keying in on my hand a little bit. So like they can be this tricolor, which supposedly if you put two tricolors together, you can get an all black melanistic animal. I haven't tried yet. His girlfriend downstairs is a tricolor, and maybe we're going to brumate him this coming year. We'll see how that goes. But they can be kind of like orange with thinner black and kind of brighter yellow patterns. They can be kind of like a grayish color. They can be kind of a cream with like orange dots running down them. They're just really cool, and that's why they're called variable, because they're all the same species. They're like, there's not really any actual like morphs like albinos and stuff like that, at least as far as I know, but they're just all so different, and they're all the same species, and you can all cross them, and so they won't stack, but you can put like a tricolor and then another one with like the Sierra Leone, which is different. Like that's what they call them, is like, because that's kind of where they're found naturally. You can put those together and you can get tricolor Sierra Leones, or you can even get other ones in there too, just kind of going back how far that lineage went.
They're all pretty much same husbandry, feeding, all that.
Yep, it's all pretty much the same. These guys, like the Cal Kings, they kind of get a little bit longer and heavier body than these guys. They stay a little bit smaller. They're usually more kind of like rockier areas and stuff, closer to gray bands and things like that. But like he's a full-grown male. Like they can get 3.5, 4 feet long, so nothing crazy, and still kind of really thin and slender-bodied.
Pretty docile and temperamental.
For the most part, yeah. I mean, they're king snakes, so arguably most of them have a pretty good prey drive and prey response, but they're all individuals. Like you saw like O'Malley, where if he's being bothered or if there's food, he's ready to go. But once he's aware that there's nothing happening, or if he's not getting a little grumpy, he just sat there. Yeah. And then you have other ones like, we'll see how the Brooks is doing. Yep, there he goes. Man, you are just... Did you put like some sort of like rat cologne on or something? Because they're just, every single one is just going up there.
I guess I just smell good. I don't know.
Yeah, but yeah, they all just kind of depends on the individual. But like as a whole, I recommend king snakes and milk snakes as kind of like intro beginner snakes. Number one, because their husbandry is pretty forgiving. It's pretty easy to manage, but because they're not like very defensive, very quick to bite animals. Like I wouldn't recommend a scrub python or a green tree python or a rainbow boa for a beginner, but I would absolutely recommend a Mexican black, a Thayers, or a Cal King. Hope you guys like this video too. If you can, please like and subscribe. Please, 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 please. I don't want to be super famous and popular, but I really feel like a lot of this stuff is good. So there's good quality information out there. Hopefully it's not too boring, and I want to spread that with everybody. So we kind of got these guys hooked on snakes, and that was pretty easy. So you can see how very quickly it went from learning about it, understanding it, appreciating, and now they're in love with the things too. And that's the kind of thing that we want to talk about and we want to spread a little bit. So please like and subscribe, share with your friends, both online and outline, your passion for animals, for reptiles, for whatever it is that you care about. Check us out on our Instagram, on our Facebook page, jzsreptiles, exactly the same. We're going to hopefully have some eggs on the ground here in the next couple weeks. Maybe these guys will pick up some babies once they hatch. We'll hopefully get a website started soon, maybe Morph Market account. We'll get that stuff out there, but that's all in the future. Right now, we're just trying to talk about some good quality, wholesome information. Please check us out next time and hope you guys have a good day.